A guy with gray hair and a scar on his right eye is fighting someone. He seems pretty crazy. Someone who looks like a necromancer is holding a staff in his hand, surrounded by undead. The protagonist remembers that he couldn't even imagine something before. Against the background of the red moon stands a tall girl with long blonde hair and huge bat wings. Bats themselves fly around the girl in large numbers. The bat girl flies, holding an ordinary guy in a green jacket by the waist. The guy and the magician are nearby. The protagonist finishes his thought. He couldn't imagine that they would be enemies before. Returning to the beginning of the story, he packs his bag. The protagonist is sitting in a regular university lecture hall. A classmate sits down next to him. The protagonist remembers that he entered the university. He admits that he went there without any particular purpose and enjoyed ordinary life. A classmate, saying goodbye already on the street, declares that he is going to his girlfriend. The main character curses, tells him not to laugh at him, and heads in the opposite direction. A feather hangs in the air right above him, slowly falling to the ground. The protagonist wonders whether he should go into the library. A moment later, the feather touches the guy's head. Suddenly, stepping forward, the main character feels no support under his feet. There is an open sewer hatch in front of him. A second before the fall, the guy exclaimed in surprise and question. The main character fell into the hatch. As he fell, the guy screamed piercingly, stretching his arms upward in an unsuccessful attempt to cling to at least something. Mentally, he begged. Trying to slowly open his eyes, the protagonist noticed silhouettes of people. His mental request for salvation was completed only now, after a more or less successful landing. A voice rang out, calling the chosen ones to stand up. Raising himself up on his elbows and opening one eye, the guy tried to look around. Besides him, there were 5 other equally perplexed people. The main character wondered where he was and who all these people were. The conversations between the puzzled teenagers were interrupted by a man sitting on the throne. He was probably the king. This old man ordered everyone to be silent and introduced himself. His name was Bergval Gardgar. He was the king of the Empire of Gardgar. The people were surprised. The protagonist noted that his arrival in another world was similar to a typical anime plot. The king continued speaking. He said that all 6 of them were chosen to become vessels for their warriors. The protagonist noted that all of the travelers were scared. The king finished his speech by saying that they would all help destroy humanity. This caused an internal protest in the protagonist. The main character, whose name was Kurozuka Yuma, mentally noted that this was his worst nightmare and muttered that he wanted to go home. He was afraid and hated everything around him. Suddenly, one of the time travelers asked decisively what they would get if they joined the king. This question caused surprise and fear in Yuma. The protagonist was mentally amazed that this boy was talking to the king like that. His face reflected misunderstanding, fear, and surprise. The girl standing nearby replied that they promised a comfortable life to all who would cooperate. She added that they, like the time travelers, had their secrets. The kingdom would give a blessing, but only to the bravest. The guy who had spoken up earlier put his hands on his hips and said that promises didn't sound very interesting. The girl explained that it was a necessary procedure. The protagonist mentally wondered why this guy looked down on everyone. Yuma found himself thinking that he actually wanted to communicate with others, just as boldly and courageously. Looking at the knights in armor, as well as the stern face of the king, the protagonist came to the conclusion that they were too scary for him to allow himself such behavior. Remembering this, Yuma noted that this would be a terrifying story for him. The protagonist stood behind the main mass of the time travelers. His face expressed anxiety. The girl, who had answered the questions earlier, pointed to a gloomy statue and explained that it was their altar for rituals. Yuma, looking at this altar, became even more anxious and frightened. He muttered that perhaps this was all a dream. The girl continued speaking. Pointing to another woman in nun's robes, she introduced her as Edna Hansa, the head of the central church. Edna said that it was time to meet her first warriors. The protagonist noted that she was very beautiful. Edna said that she would perform a ritual, after which all the newcomers would receive a divine blessing, and called on them to stand in line. The cheeky guy who had asked questions earlier volunteered to go first. Following the instructions, he stood in the magic circle. Edna declared that this guy had received a blessing from the god of sin, who controls flames. His blessing was protection from flames. The next person received the blessing of the memory dragon, protection from the ice cover. Recalling this event, the protagonist replied that he felt a little awkward because everyone except him received some kind of protection. Yuma at that time was mentally praying to also receive some kind of thing to protect his body. Unexpectedly, he, as the last remaining time traveler, was also called to the magic circle. The guy's face reflected a cartoonishly heightened horror. Yuma walked unsteadily towards the altar. He was very nervous. On the way to the magic circle, a feather fell from him. Edna announced that the boy had received the blessing of the goddess of healing, who governed healing, the possibility of rebirth. In his mind, Yuma thought that healing was probably a reason to attack, which couldn't help but upset him. The observers present whispered something, and then one of them announced that the time travelers had received many blessings today, thanked them for going through the ceremony, and said that a dinner would be organized in their honor, which caused joy among the time travelers. As Yuma left the ritual room, he thought sadly that he would have preferred protection because he wanted to avoid pain. Edna looked after him from under her brows. The travelers were brought to a long table with a variety of food on it. One of the observers invited them to help themselves. Yuma, seeing the amount of food, immediately decided that this world wasn't so bad. His favorite food was meat. Someone asked the protagonist if he wanted to leave. Yuma, looking up from his meal, confirmed it. The boy named Akanashi Gate added that he was still not sure it was safe enough. The protagonist noted that he looked like a popular guy. Another boy named Shinki Takuya replied that Yuma should go first because of his strength. A girl named Araki Katomi, on the other hand, asked him to stand behind since he can heal others. The protagonist thought that he was tired of this. Hiding his face in his mug, he mentally admitted that he was glad he wouldn't have to fight. Returning to his food, Yuma promised himself that he would start practicing healing magic from tomorrow. Edna, standing at the window where the huge moon was visible, was informed that the work would begin tomorrow. The woman said that they had much to do and ordered that a man with a certain precious talent be protected. The man in the shadows bowed, accepting the orders. The next morning, there was a knock on the door of the main character's room, trying to wake the guy up. Sleepy Yuma opened it and asked the man knocking on the door what was wrong. He replied that they needed help. The man explained that they were running out of medicine because of the battles with the enemies and asked the boy to help. Yuma, realizing what was going on, shook off his drowsiness and agreed. He looked pleased to be given his first task. The man gave Yuma a change of clothes because the boy's clothes were dirty. After changing, the main character noted that the clothes were somewhat similar to hospital clothes. As Yuma entered the room, the man who had accompanied him earlier pointed to a chair and told him to sit down. The boy, feeling the tension, asked how exactly he would treat the wounded. Recalling this moment, Yuma noted that he felt hated. Suddenly, someone grabbed him by the shoulder. The man who brought him here answered with a crazy smile that the sick would need Yuma's blood and flesh to heal. The amazed boy thought he had misheard. The people next to him pinned the protagonist to the chair so that he could not get up, and grabbed his right hand. Yuma, barely resisting from horror, asked what the man meant. His hand was fixed with straps. One of his assistants took a huge knife from a nearby table, which did not escape the attention of the protagonist. The man took the syringe and sarcastically replied that he didn't even know. Sweat was streaming down Yuma's face. He bit his lip and remained silent. The only thing the guy felt now was fear. The man, still smiling madly, calmed Yuma, saying that he would be fine. He addressed the boy as the guardian of immortality. The man added that no matter how serious the wound was, Yuma would never die. He also said that the boy's body was the source of the best medicine in the world. The boy clenched his fists. Yuma wanted to object, but he was interrupted, saying that they needed a lot of blood. The protagonist raised his free hand and was suddenly slashed with a knife. The boy didn't immediately realize what had happened. He looked at his severed hand in amazement. A moment later, Yuma screamed in pain. The man who brought him here spoke calmly, complaining about the boy who was yelling. Suddenly, the man hit the boy in the face, instantly stopping the screams. Still smiling, he said that Yuma was immortal. Suddenly, the severed limb bulged. The boy looked at his hand in fear and saw that it was rapidly transforming. A moment later, his arm grew back. The man picked up the severed limb from the floor and remarked that it was amazing. With a crazy smile, looking at the stump of a limb, he added that Yuma had great potential and then ordered to continue the experiments. The guy remembered that even then, 2 days after arriving in the new world, he learned that his life would become hell. A man asked how things were going. They told him they couldn't offer much, but they had a guy with regeneration. A pen fell onto an open book. The girl, whose neck was bandaged, noted that someone was still alive. In her hands, she held a glass of wine and the same feather. When the girl spoke, sharp fangs could be seen in her mouth. Holding the pen in her hand, the girl noted that if it was used, then something seemed to have happened on the outside. Yuma recalled his parents' words. They said that it was time for him to think about the future, since he would soon be a sophomore, and they cited as an example a friend who was planning to get married after graduating from university. The main character didn't care what his future would be like. Bloodied and missing several limbs, Yuma sat on the same chair. The man who had done this to him praised the boy and said that he was proud of him. A bloody knife was pressed against Yuma's cervical vertebra. The man said that the boy gives his all to people. The boy's body was engulfed in regenerative transformations after yet another wound. His eyes were expressionless. With a piercing cry, Yuma sat up in bed. Clutching his t-shirt over his heart, the boy breathed heavily, trying to catch his breath. Cold sweat ran down his face and body. Holding his throat, Yuma looked at one of his hands. Slowly recovering from the horror that pierced him, the protagonist realized that it was a dream. Sitting up more calmly and evenly on the bed, he remembered that he had lost consciousness during the experiment. Yuma's next thought was that the experiment would continue if he woke up. He remembered the man with the knife, smiling madly, and his clasped fingers began to tremble. Yuma curled up into a ball and began to mindlessly beg for an end to his torment. Hearing footsteps outside the door, Yuma jerked up on his hands, looking towards the door in horror. However, the man behind the door was not a crazy man, just a security guard. When the protagonist realized this, the fear left him for a while, and self-pity, pain, and a sense of injustice returned. Burying his face in the bed, Yuma clutched the blanket, trying to hold back his tears. He begged for salvation, and suddenly a circle appeared right above him, similar to the one that was on the definition of the blessing of the time travelers on the first day. A light burst out from this magic circle, enveloping the boy. Yuma, surprised, raised his face to it. The guards noticed flashes of light in the protagonist's room through the bars of the door. They immediately went inside, trying to figure out what was going on, but the subject was missing. After some time, Yuma found himself under a huge tree, from which the leaves were falling beautifully. The guy, fascinated by the leaves swirling in the air, did not understand anything. At this time, Takuya and Gaita were playing chess. Takuya moved his queen and declared checkmate. Gaita, having lost, flared up. The score was 5-thou in favor of Takuya. Looking at one of the figures, Takuya noted with pleasant surprise that, it turns out, even in this world there is chess. Gaita demanded a rematch. His opponent said that the boy did not know how to lose. Kotomi, approaching the guys, saw that they were playing chess, and scolded her comrades for having fun, although they needed to go to the dungeon, and then suggested having dinner. Rising from the table, Takuya suggested that they continue after the meal. Gaita, still angry, said that there would be meat. Kotomi was the first to leave the room where her comrades were playing chess, and noticed that the guards and the smiley man were talking about something. The girl asked if something was wrong. The smiling man replied that they were having a meeting, so she had nothing to worry about. Kotomi was surprised that the meeting was so late, but wished them luck. The smile man turned to his subordinates and said that the other warriors should not know about what had happened. One of the subordinates noted that if the search party does not find the escapee, then only labyrinths await him. The smiling man said that this test subject is not simple at all. He added that he would go to the priests to demand help from them, and ordered the others to send a search party into the very depths of the labyrinth. Yuma was lying under a beautiful and majestic tree. He was very weak, so he did not make any attempts to get up, silently looking up. Suddenly, the boy heard footsteps nearby. This made him sit up with a jerk. The local employee told someone that he had heard something about a labyrinth, but he didn't know that people even came here. One of his comrades said that only priests could be here, which caused doubt in the first speaker. He was immediately shouted at, ordered not to be afraid. The third employee, seeing an object on the wall, asked what it was. He was told that it was a trap against those trying to get in, but it would not work if the person had a staff, which was what the speaker was holding. However, if you try to pass without it, then inevitable death awaits you. Yuma, walking on the steps, fell into just such a trap. He was cut by blades that appeared as if from nowhere. The boy's severed head rolled away, leaving a trail of blood behind it. Yuma didn't seem to even have time to realize what had happened to him. Suddenly, his dismembered body began to come back together, blood and flesh coming together to form its original shape. Yuma got up from the floor, but his limbs were shaking. He thought that what happened must be a joke. Continuing on his way, Yuma thought that the people here were real monsters. Stepping out into the room full of light, the boy raised his head. Tears streamed down his face. Yuma mentally asked himself what he had done to deserve such torment. Pulling himself together, the protagonist tried to wipe away his tears, but they continued to flow. Filled with determination and awareness of the horror that was happening to him, Yuma exclaimed that he needed to escape from here. As the guy took off, a trio of employees appeared in one of the passages into the hall. One of them rushed after the fugitive, despite the attempts of the most experienced of them to hold back his comrade. Suddenly, a huge hand appeared from somewhere above. A moment later, she squeezed the impatient employee, crushing him. The man's comrades froze in shock. The younger of them asked fearfully what it was. He was told that one must not hurry in the labyrinth. It was a spell of the magicians, a spell of instant death against which even a wand is useless. The senior official suggested waiting for the priests, mentally wondering why the magician had not responded to the test subject. Yuma, having broken away from his pursuers, sat down near the wall. He noted that this building was very strange. The more the guy walked around it, the less he understood. Yuma thought he had seen something like this on TV. Suddenly, someone called out to the boy, asking what he was doing. Jerking in fear, the protagonist asked who was there. From the hole in the floor, he was told to look below. Looking down into the hole, a frightened Yuma saw a girl with a bandaged neck. She greeted the guy. The girl said her name was Eva and asked Yuma's name. Yuma, after a slight hesitation, introduced himself. He noticed that something like tubes were attached to the girl's body. The guy asked if they were experimenting on her too. Eva, somewhat surprised by the question, confirmed it. The girl asked if Yuma was forced to participate in experiments. With his face darkened by pain and fear, the guy answered affirmatively. Eva, still smiling, said that it was a nightmare and suggested that they take a break at her place, citing the fact that rarely anyone comes here. Suddenly, the girl seemed to remember something and, sitting down in a chair, said that Yuma reminded her of someone and then asked how he ended up here. These words caused bewilderment in the main character. Recalling his recent regeneration, Yuma briefly responded with disgust and fear that he was forced and used. Iva, as if not understanding, asked if it was done against the boy's will. Yuma nervously added that he didn't know how many times he would have died if he weren't immortal. Eva looked surprised. She said that Yuma looked just like a normal person. Looking away, Eva added that this was probably why the boy was a test subject. Yuma clenched his trembling hands into fists. The protagonist realized that Eva was in a similar situation, although she looked carefree. With difficulty choosing words, Yuma desperately offered the girl to escape from here together. Trying to convince Eva, he added that although he himself could not do anything, he could disarm all the traps thanks to his immortality. Yuma firmly decided that he would not leave the girl alone in such a place. Spreading his arms, the guy promised that they would run away and find themselves free. The main character also said that they would have enough to eat when they were free, to the point of exhaustion. Eva looked at Yuma in surprise, but silently. An awkward silence hung in the dungeon. Unable to bear it, Yuma asked Eva if she liked his idea. Suddenly, the girl called out to him. She asked with a grin if she had understood correctly that the protagonist was going to deal with all the traps alone. Yuma wanted to explain again that he was immortal, but Eva quickly stopped him with a loud cry. Still calm but no longer smiling, the girl said that if he wanted to become a human, he didn't have to endure and be afraid. Yuma's face showed disbelief, and Eva smiled again. The guy wanted to object. The girl interrupted him, asking if he could see the wires that connected her. Yuma confirmed that he could see them. Eva explained that they were using them to suck her blood around the clock. This statement shocked the main character. Leaning back in her chair, the girl added that she was suffering from a lack of blood and was completely exhausted. Eva said that she would help Yuma escape if he gave her some of his blood. The girl added that she was very strong, even if you couldn't tell from her appearance. Swallowing, the protagonist leaned over the hole in the floor and extended his hand to Eva, telling her that she could take as much blood as she needed, since Yuma wouldn't die anyway. The girl smiled and extended her hand to him. Suddenly, something separated from her hand and flew out of the hole. Yuma, having examined the creature, realized that it was a bat. Eva asked the guy not to be afraid, because this bat was just a part of her. Suddenly, the bat landed on Yuma's hand, sucked some blood, and returned to the girl's palm. Eva, touching her neck with some kind of magical mark from which tubes were sticking out, declared that she could now remove it. Throwing away the tubes, the girl rose from her chair and said that everything was fine and that she had already used the blood that Yuma had given her. Smiling, Eva said something about part of the deal. She looked quite monstrous at that moment. Hanging over Yuma, who had fallen on his back, Eva swore on her name and status as a true heir to the vampires that she would give the boy his freedom. Eva bit Yuma in the neck, sucking his blood. It seemed that only at that moment did the protagonist realize that the girl he had teamed up with was a vampire. Eva must have sensed something special in the boy's blood. After some time, Eva pulled away and stood up, smiling, saying that she hadn't drunk blood for a long time, and the irons were preventing her from moving. Kissing Yuma on the cheek, the girl thanked him and then added that they should leave gracefully while they had the chance. Grabbing the guy by the waist, Eva straightened up to her full height again. Licking her lips, the vampire thought that she had gotten an interesting man. 2 huge bat-like wings appeared behind Eva. The girl took off the next moment, causing Yuma to scream in surprise. Everything that was happening was too fast for him. As she approached the room where one of the employees had been killed, Eva sensed the presence of a mage. She knew that the main problem would be the mages, so she sped up so that the mysterious hand wouldn't have time to catch them. Eva wanted to fly up, but she met the gaze of some creature. They crossed the room, but the magician did not react to the fugitives, which surprised the girl. They stopped for a short time, but did not give the vampire and the man time to come to their senses. Guards jumped out from somewhere to the side with loud shouts. The priest who was among them exclaimed that the bat had been freed by the blood of an immortal and ordered them to prepare. Eve complained that she had no one to rely on. A barrage of magical fire fell upon the fugitives, but the girl did not move from her place. Right in front of them, the magic was dissipating, bending around the vampire and the human. The priest exclaimed in horror that spells of average power were not enough to buy even a little time. At this time, Eva, still holding Yuma with one hand, raised her other hand and began casting a spell. The girl said that their opponent's magic was strong, but since they were missing, she would show them something even more powerful. Eva's spell caused a huge explosion, destroying a large part of the labyrinth and making a huge hole in one of its walls. Yuma couldn't help but be amazed at this. Eva flew out of the hole she had made and suggested burning everything down. The protagonist didn't look too happy with the idea. Suddenly, the vampire and the immortal found themselves near the time travelers who had been sucked into this world at the same time as Yuma. They mistook Eva for a monster and thought that the girl wanted to harm him. Gaida, without thinking twice, rushed at the vampire with his spear at the ready, shouting for her to let go of Yuma. Eva, instantly appearing behind the attacker, began casting a new spell. Unexpectedly, Yuma, who she still held by the waist, screamed loudly, trying to stop her ally. Due to the surprise, Eve's spell was slightly disrupted, missing Gaida, but it was still incredibly powerful. The girl pushed the attacker into the fountain, causing panic among his comrades. Looking at the destruction she had caused, Eva landed softly on a cross on one of the roofs. She mentally noted that she had been a little scared when Yuma had screamed, and came to the conclusion that Gita was an acquaintance of his who had come to this world at the same time as the protagonist. The vampire smiled and said she hoped she had harassed the attackers enough to stop them. Yuma, still groggy from flying at such speeds, didn't look too great. Eva asked the protagonist what he was going to do now that they had reached the surface. Yuma's face showed sadness, but he resolutely replied that he would look for a way to return to his world. Taking the protagonist by the waist with both hands so that their faces were opposite each other, Eva promised that in that case she would be his bodyguard, which surprised Yuma because the vampire had not really thought about this decision. The girl picked up Yuma, holding him under his knees and behind his back, and then replied that she had sworn to give him freedom, and vampires keep their promises. Smiling, Eva added that she was bored anyway. The fugitives were flying again. Edna watched them sullenly. The priest knelt before the woman and asked if she had summoned him. Edna ordered to save the immortal from the vampire. The Smile Man and someone else stood next to her. The man was a guy with a half-masked face, his bottomless eyes reflecting nothing, as Edna added that they had to get Yuma back at any cost. The main character woke up on the riverbank. Sleepily opening his eyes, Yuma tried to look around and asked where they were. Eva, who was bathing in the river at the time, saw that her companion had woken up and asked if he wanted to wash himself. The boy turned away, terribly embarrassed. He wondered if vampires could be in the sun. Suddenly, a man crawled out of the bushes, bringing clothes. Yuma, frightened, recoiled and tried to find out who it was, but Eva behaved absolutely calmly. She explained that she made this merchant a servant using mind control. After getting dressed, the vampire promised Yuma that this would not happen to him because she was his bodyguard. After some time, when both fugitives had changed their clothes, the vampire put on a black dress, and the immortal got ordinary pants, a t-shirt, and a jacket. Eva suggested going to a big city nearby. Before that, the girl brought the guy to eat. Yuma, who burst into tears at the sight of the food, began to eat with great pleasure. A few seconds later, he asked Eva if she would like to eat, but the bodyguard replied that she had eaten her fill while the main character was sleeping. Switching to another topic, Yuma asked if there was any way they could make money quickly, since he didn't want to use the vampire's mind control for extortion. Smiling, the girl said yes. After some time, the heroes found themselves in the forest. Eva explained that they would now hunt down a demon and sell its corpse to the guild. Her plan was to become adventurers. Yuma, frightened by this proposal, thought that it sounded like a typical fantasy. The protagonist laughed tensely and said that there seemed to be nothing here. Eva nodded and jumped up, asking Yuma to wait where she was. Suddenly, there was a noise in the forest, and a few moments later, a huge herd of wild boars rushed out of the thicket straight at the main character, which made him break out in a cold sweat from horror. When the animals had almost caught up with the guy, frozen in fear, Eva dealt with them all with a few lightning-fast movements. Yuma realized that he was wrong when he thought the forest was quiet. All the monsters had fled from Eva. Surrounded by dead monsters and animals, the protagonist asked how to carry them, to which he received the answer that he could use a portable box. It turns out that it can be used by anyone who is summoned. Eva, who told about this, added that Yuma should have an appraisal skill that allows him to choose monsters more easily. The protagonist tried to figure out the functions of this skill. While he was busy studying the portable box, one of the defeated monsters began to move. Seeing it coming towards him, Yuma screamed in fear. At the last moment, the protagonist was saved from the monster's attack by a small magic circle that appeared out of nowhere. Yuma did not understand what had happened because he himself did not do anything. The guy remembered that something similar had happened when he was teleported from the room under a huge tree. Eva noticed that it was already dark and suggested staying with some of her friends who were nearby. Yuma agreed. After some time, the guy regretted this decision. He and Eva came to a haunted house. Yuma tried to say something while shaking, but Eva only noted that the place was crowded as usual. An old man who looked like a butler greeted the vampire, noting that she hadn't been here for a long time. The girl asked if there was a free room, to which she received an affirmative answer and an invitation to come in. Yuma, trembling with fear, followed the bodyguard. He realized with horror that this hotel was surrounded and infested with ghosts. The room the butler offered them seemed luxurious, which couldn't help but surprise Yuma. He thanked the old man. Suddenly, huge eyes appeared in one of the windows. Taking off his jacket, the protagonist noticed that there was only one bed in the room. Eva said that she would sleep in a coffin and, with a smile, invited Yuma to join, to which she received a frightened refusal. Lost in thought, the protagonist realized that he should have thought of this earlier. The guy almost got into bed when he noticed that there was someone under the blanket. Frightened, Yuma screamed in horror throughout the hotel. Eva, looking at the main character and the little ghost sitting on him, declared the next morning that he liked the guy. Even more tired than before, Yuma complained that he had not slept a wink. The ghost seemed to have become very attached to Yuma, tirelessly following him everywhere. The butler, having learned of the problem, brought the boy a spirit stone. It turned out that if you put it on, the wearer would gain a protective spirit. This worked with ghosts too. Looking tiredly at the ghost that had climbed onto his head, Yuma thought that the protective spirit should come in handy. After some time in the guild, the protagonist expressed a desire to join it. The girl at the reception asked him to fill out the documents. Yuma noted that the pendant given to him worked perfectly. Continuing to register in the guild, the protagonist mentally complained that Eva was looking at him. The boy finally got his ID. He had to show it when buying and selling magical artifacts. Wearily happy, Yuma mentally noted that now they could earn money. The guild worker warned that he should be careful with the ID. Suddenly, a group of adventurers began to hit on Eva, asking her to join them. Yuma was already tense, not knowing what to do, when the girl refused. Smiling, the vampire declared that she was a one-woman woman. Eva happily suggested going underground. Yuma, who hadn't slept all night because of the ghost, would have preferred sleep, but he didn't argue. First, the girl had to prove her skills. When the heroes found themselves in one of the dungeons, a horde of monsters immediately attacked the vampire who came forward. Eva only smiled carnivorously. Standing on a pile of defeated creatures, the girl excitedly shared that it was the first time she had seen such a horde of demons. The protagonist, who was watching this, removed the title of unreliable from Eva's status. Pleased with the hunt, Eva decided to look around. Yuma warned her not to let her wings out and said that he would also collect something in the area. Suddenly, he saw the same ghost that had kept him awake. However, this time Yuma was not afraid of it, but, on the contrary, offered his help. The protagonist sat quietly next to the prey, while Eva explored something nearby. Suddenly, some kind of rope wrapped around Yuma, instantly restricting both his mobility and ability to speak. After some time, the vampire returned with new prey, but could not find her partner. A thug jumped out at her from somewhere, but the girl dodged in time and avoided the devastating blow. Landing near her attacker, Eva angrily asked where Yuma was. The man laughed, saying that he thought the girl was a vampire. Holding the guy standing next to him by the shoulder, the man asked what she would do about it. The guy attacked Eva in a flash. He turned out to be a ghoul, which made her feel uncomfortable. Before the guy dealt a heavy magical blow, the girl noticed a tattoo on his arm. It seemed familiar to Eva. Coughing from the blow, the vampire realized that this guy was an undead using light magic. This conclusion left the girl stunned, because it was impossible. Yuma, tied to a tree on a hill, silently watched the fight. Eva assumed that the attackers were from the church. The girl asked if the guy was a true descendant of vampires like her, and then added that one shouldn't expect anything else from the church. The man's answer was inappropriate. Yuma tried to get out. It turned out that he was tied with Ivy. He understood that his comrade was in bad shape. Suddenly, the boy managed to break the bonds and fell to the ground. Ivy simply disappeared. Yuma jumped up and held one hand out in front of him, silently begging for the magic to work again. At that moment, the thug who had attacked Eva first appeared behind her. At the last moment, Yuma managed to save her. After examining the girl with fear, the protagonist asked if she was okay. Seeing that everything was fine, Yuma said that his power was unstable and asked the bodyguard to teach him how to control magic. Eva asked in surprise if Yuma really wanted her to teach the boy his own magic. The protagonist excitedly agreed, starting to list examples, but the vampire asked him to calm down. At this point, the man holding the ghoul back once again ordered him to attack, despite not understanding how the two escapees had escaped the attack. This time, Eva saved them from the blow, but it turned out that there was another enemy here, because of her. A magic circle appeared on the ground, and something like a dome in the air. The vampire realized that this magical barrier was created to prevent them from escaping, and spread her wings. At this time, the man threw something to the ghoul, ordering him to use it. It seemed to be a small bottle, the potion in which strengthened the boy's light magic. The ghoul's unexpectedly powerful blow was parried by Yuma. The protagonist realized he had another trick. Turning to Eva, who was holding him by the waist with one hand, he explained that he could redirect the ghoul's magic so that the fugitives would have a chance to counterattack. However, they almost missed another blow. Eva flew up, dodging multiple blows. Yuma added that he didn't understand how his ability worked yet, and that he needed to focus. The girl chuckled and said that it would be fun. Taking advantage of the moment, Eva explained that Yuma used ancient magic, it must be felt, not understood with the head. The vampire added that the guy only needed to imagine what he wanted, and his wish would come true. Yuma extended his hand forward. Suddenly, a ghoul appeared right in front of the fugitives. As he swung his arm to strike, Yuma thought that he hated pain. Suddenly, the ghoul's magic didn't hit him. All the damage was done to the attacker. Yuma realized that he had managed to redirect the magic again. Eva gently lowered the protagonist to the ground and praised him. Suddenly, the discarded ghoul rose from the ground, his eyes even blacker than before. Yuma realized with horror that there was not a scratch on his opponent. Eva seemed to understand what was going on. The people of the church had broken a taboo. At this time, the man handed the ghoul another bottle. Suddenly, the man objected. They did not break the taboo. The church gave this guy already like that. He asked if Yuma really knew nothing about magic in this world. A malicious and mocking smile appeared on his face. The man explained that magic was originally the domain of devils, and humans only received a portion of the powers when studying it. So, despite the same rank, humans were no match for devils. He added that this is exactly what the church uses. According to him, there is a submissive demon living in people who has a weak spot in the form of a weapon with light magic. The man asked how Yuma thought this ghoul was created. He explained that the church raised him, but that's not all. Yuma understood what the man meant. Horror and disbelief were reflected on the boy's face. Taking a step towards the speaker by inertia, the protagonist stated in disbelief that they were proud of sacrificing children. The man laughed and said that they were simply orphans. He said with a nasty smile that they were just using their lives rationally, since these children were abandoned anyway, so they were worthless. Disgust was added to Yuma's emotions. He suddenly realized that in front of him was a monster in human skin. Ava, angered by the man's revelation, said that alchemy that goes against nature is forbidden, but everyone already knows that the church has fun creating chimeras. The man objected, saying that the vampire was exaggerating and that her knowledge was outdated. Yuma remained silent. Without looking at his opponents, he turned to his partner. While they were discussing something, the man noticed that the fugitives had started talking and again ordered the ghoul to attack. The marks on the boy's body lit up, resembling lightning. He tried to create an even stronger spell than before and strike with it, but the enemies were not particularly surprised by this, calmly remaining in place. When the spell's remnants dissipated, it turned out that the fugitives were gone. Ghoul realized too late that Eva and Yuma had come from behind. The protagonist jumped on the boy. The vampire said that her skills would only work for a few moments, so Yuma hurried. He covered the ghoul's ears and told him not to listen, to free himself from the shackles. Suddenly, the ghoul seemed to lose consciousness. He began to fall forward, but the protagonist managed to catch him before the boy fell to the ground. The man was shocked by what had happened. Carefully holding the ghoul close to him, Yuma called the man to look at what he had done to the boy, and then declared that they were taking him away. The protagonist's face at that moment was more menacing and serious than ever. They tried to stop the fugitives, but Yuma confidently redirected magic at the attackers, which amazed them even more. Absorbed by their own magic, the enemies disappeared in a beam of bright light. A deafening explosion thundered in the forest. Without looking at the fallen enemies, Yuma said that the hunt was a success. He still held the rescued boy. The partners moved away from the battlefield. After some time, when Eva was already carrying the ghoul on her back, she complained that they had a lot of problems already on the first day, and also an unexpected trophy. The rescued boy slept peacefully, leaning his cheek against the girl's shoulder. The vampire admitted that Yuma had scared her when he said they would take the ghoul, but she had been curious, so she had agreed. The girl asked what they would do with the boy. Yuma had faltered. When Eva, not hearing an answer, turned to her companion, she saw him lying on the ground, unconscious. Yuma sleepily opened his eyes. He was lying in bed, carefully covered with a blanket. A friendly but slightly annoying ghost had settled down on the pillow next to him. Raising himself up on his elbow, the protagonist looked around, trying to figure out where he was. Eva entered the room and, seeing that Yuma had woken up, wished him a good morning. The girl asked how her partner was feeling. The guy answered that he was fine and asked if they were at the hotel. Eva put a wet towel on his head. Looking at the towel that had slipped off the top of his head, the protagonist asked what was going on and whether the owner had prepared a gift for him. Eva explained that after everything that had happened, Yuma had become overtired and fainted, and also confirmed that the guy was immortal. The vampire sat down on the edge of the bed and added that with the help of magic, it is possible to get rid of fatigue. Reaching for the main character's shirt, she said that fatigue is, in fact, just tiredness. After pulling the clothes off Yuma's shoulders, Eva offered to give him a massage. Embarrassed and noticeably blushing, the guy pulled his shirt back on and declared that everything was fine. Eva sighed and said that he shouldn't resist, but she didn't insist. Changing the subject, the girl decided to go shopping in town. Yuma's face immediately became wary at the mention of the city, remembering the recent battle. Leaning forward, the protagonist exclaimed that going into the city could be dangerous, since the attack had happened only yesterday. Suddenly, the butler intervened. He explained that there was security in the city, so there shouldn't be any attacks. Eva got out of bed and instructed the little ghost to look after Yuma while she was gone. A few minutes later, the protagonist awkwardly waved goodbye to the bodyguard through the window. When the girl left, Yuma noticed that there was no one else there. More precisely, in this room, besides the main character and the ghost, there was only one living being, a sleeping ghoul boy. Seeing his peaceful face, Yuma thought that he had managed to cover this child after all. The protagonist mentally returned to the attackers, the strange man, the smiling man, and Edna, and came to the conclusion that they were acting together, and their target was him, not Eva. These thoughts, coupled with his concern for his allies, made Yuma's lips purse nervously. The butler, noticing this, asked what was wrong. The boy replied that he was worried. Without looking at the older man, Yuma explained that he was glad that Eva was with him, as the church would not stop its persecution, but he was afraid that the vampire would be captured again because of him. The butler asked the protagonist not to worry, and added that it was much more pleasant than he thought. At this time, Eva was already in the city. She was walking briskly along the street when a shopkeeper called out to her, saying that he was selling fresh fruit at a nice price. The girl looked around with interest. Approaching the counter, Eva began to examine the assortment, asking the seller about prices. She was already saying goodbye to the man, holding a full shopping bag in her hands, when she heard loud screams nearby. Eva involuntarily turned in their direction. Adventurers ran past her on the street. One of them reported that wolves had come from the forest, and another, who had already realized the seriousness of the situation, ordered someone to gather the guild. The speaker added that, according to eyewitnesses, the wolf pack was led by an incredibly large wolf. One of the adventurers told the speaker not to talk nonsense because all wolves are large. Eva, deciding not to listen to the rest of the argument, headed for the exit of the city. Noticing this, one of the adventurers called out to her, begging the girl not to go there because it was dangerous. The vampire turned around, smiled, and thanked for the warning. Suddenly, a wind blew on the adventurers, and then the girl disappeared somewhere. The man who called out to Eva first tried to stop her, but his comrades kept the adventurer from taking a rash step. The next second, the city gates closed. The wolf bared his toothy mouth. The girl and the boy sat huddled together, their faces full of horror. Right in front of them stood menacing wolves. Suddenly, one of them launched his attack, but the guy managed to defend himself with his sword, but his weapon was knocked out of his hands. He looked at the flying weapon. His face was full of panic. Suddenly, a sword flew past them, hitting the enemy. They looked at what was happening with confusion and realized that they had to run. Once Volkov said that it was the smell of a bat. He's been the head of the forest for 400 years. He encourages people, grants them freedom. Nearby, among the foliage, stood a girl who watched everything. The animals rushed to attack her, but she destroyed them with a wave of her hand. She said that she was sorry for disturbing him and suggested that he rest a little because he was already several hundred years old. It had always been so cozy here. Now he needed to rest in another city. That animal looked at her with fear, not taking its eyes off her. It saw the girl transform and realized that she was an immortal vampire, the ancestor. They all tucked their tails and ears in fear. They realized that they couldn't fight and left. The girl approached the soldiers and said that it was quite lively here. Looking at her, the man said that they were worried because the forest was not safe now. He asked her if she came from there. The girl replied that the wolves were just nearby. She thanked him, putting her hand on his shoulder. After she left, he noticed that some kind of flower had appeared on him. Later in the room, Yuma stroked the child's head and asked if he had always been lying like that. He was told that while he was busy, the child had been sleeping. Human flesh is destroyed over time. The old man added that emotions accumulate and disappear. Sometimes, it is important for oneself. Going out for a third, he bowed and said that he was leaving him for a while. If you need anything, you can call him. The main character wearily sank down between the beds. Later, the man looked into the room, asking the boy if he had eaten today. At that moment, he noticed the shiraban plant. Picking it up, he realized that it was perfect for relieving stress and fatigue. The three of them were lying on the bed, and flowers were laid out around them. Even the fruit basket was covered with them. They wished him happiness. A group of adventurers moved through a dark forest, black crows flying above them. Suddenly, a group of monsters appeared behind them. They turned around warily, not realizing how long ago they had appeared. The guy started attacking them, realizing that they were not going to give up. The team members did not understand how many more would arrive. They were indignant at the leader, who said that it would be easy. The appearance of new monsters terrified them. A skeleton dressed in black clothes appeared before them. Behind him were his minions. He looked at the group of people with a heavy gaze. A flock of crows flew over the houses. One of them landed on the windowsill. A note was tied to its paw. Noticing this, the man came up and took the message. After reading it, the man rested heavily. Eva called out to the protagonist. She held the boy in front of her, asking if he was coming or not. Because of this, his arm fell off. Yuma was horrified by this. He started shouting at the girl about what she was doing. However, she calmly raised her hand and tried to put it back in place, but it didn't hold. He asked in a panic what they should do. His arm had not yet recovered. She answered that on such a one, magic would not work. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and a man looked in, asking if everything was okay. The girl screamed that it was not what he thought. They were just cleaning up. At that moment, they were trying to bandage the boy. A little later, they were sitting at the table drinking tea. Eva said that his tea was excellent as always. The protagonist realized that the butler's name was Debus. The girl asked the man if something urgent had happened. He replied that he had been informed that the undead were raging near the eastern mountain and that a powerful lich was controlling them. The boy realized he meant the undead king. The girl said that Debus should know that she needed more information. She asked him how strong he was. He replied that the forest was full of miasma and monster souls. He was undoubtedly very strong. Calmly sipping her tea, she said that they could write a petition. The guy didn't understand what she meant. She replied that they could use a ghoul. The old man said that even though no one was controlling him now, he needed to be given a stronger spell. Until they did that, he wouldn't obey them. The guy was, what does he mean? But suddenly he thought about the possibility that the ghoul would be captured by a lich. Smiling calmly, she asked him if he really thought she would allow it. She also added that control can be transferred. So the lich will lend them his power. He will give her control over the ghoul. And if he refuses, she will destroy him. The guy listened to her story with various emotions, ranging from anxiety to fear. As they were going out, the butler handed over a letter saying that it should be given to the informant so that he could know that it was from him. He added that there were many poisonous insects in the eastern mountains, so they had to be careful. The boy was scared by these words, but the girl, looking at the sky, replied that everything was fine because the way was clear. The girl spread her wings, and they flew through the air to their destination. The guy's face was full of anxiety and covered in sweat, and she asked him not to look down. In the distance, the place they were heading to appeared. At that moment, the ghost broke away from them and flew to the side. The guy did not understand where he was heading. The ghost began to quickly look around and then noticed something, then quickly flew down. They looked in that direction and saw someone there. The protagonist realized that the informant was here. He quickly ran up to him, intending to greet him, but when he turned around, Yuma stopped because it was a pale face with black empty eye sockets. The guy fell to the ground, and Eva approached the informant, saying that he was a banshee. She handed him the letter. Lying on the ground, the guy could not move, and his heart was not in the right place. The banshee, having looked at the letter, offered to talk. He reported that monsters had invaded the forest. Their bodies were not buried, which is why the living were also in danger, and mercenaries were useless because they were affected by the miasma. Initially, the souls are stronger, the more of it. However, if there is too much miasma, they fall into agony. Spirits are lower demons. They themselves suffer from it. After that, he bowed and asked them to save them. The main character listened to their conversation sympathetically all this time. However, the girl replied that, unfortunately, they did not come for this. Extending her hand to Yuma, she helped him up and added that they had come for the lich. The protagonist calmly accepted her help and stood up. She added that they would do something to them if they were connected to the monster. Yuma lowered his gaze. Banshee said that the miasma made it impossible to see the forest from the sky. They would be better off walking from here and praying for their safety. They continued on their way. After a while, the main character began to breathe heavily. He was covered in sweat. The further they walked, the more painful it was for him. Eva said that it was not miasma. The tired protagonist did not understand what she meant. The girl began to transform and answered that he could not end his life because of this. She turned into a wolf of normal size. What she saw shocked the guy. She told him to climb on her back, she would give him a ride. The guy's face turned red from everything that was happening. He carefully climbed onto her back, the ghost helping him with this. Pressing himself against her, he thought contentedly that she was very soft. After that, the three of them were ready to follow the lich. The girl, in the form of a wolf, moved quickly through the thicket of the forest. Still sitting on her back, the guy held tightly to her fur. Meanwhile, the ghost sat on the main character's head. Suddenly, she stopped, shouting angrily that the stupid nose could no longer smell anything because of the miasma. Tears came to her eyes and her nose turned red. She told him to ask the monster to introduce them further. The protagonist addressed the ghost, saying that he should feel the presence of the lich, and asked if he could help them track him down. The satisfied ghost sparkled and flew ahead of them, showing the way. After some time, they reached a place where there were many different monsters. Eva calmly maneuvered among them. Looking at them, the main character asked if the ghost would become as evil as they were. The girl told him not to worry, because it was a ghost, and so he wouldn't. They jumped over the ravine, and the girl said that they were not alone. They felt someone's menacing presence. Stopping, they apologized for interrupting them, but they needed to talk. In front of them stood a lich with other monsters. Turning around, he realized that it was a higher vampire. He told her to get out of the way, because he didn't have time to deal with unstable people. The girl replied that she was very sorry. After that, she dealt him one powerful blow, saying that if he did not want it the good way, then it would be the bad way. An explosion occurred at the place of her attack, and when the smoke cleared, they saw that the monsters had protected the lich. The girl bared her claws and rushed to attack them, but the monsters protected him again. He said that she was greedy. She quickly jumped away from him, telling him not to call her that. He replied that he had already seen her. He was flattered that such an important person had come for him. Standing in front of him, Ava couldn't understand why he was talking like that. The monster replied that he was asking for forgiveness for that. He added that it was hard for him to restrain himself when he met someone who had decided to take the path of a demon. The protagonist did not understand what they were talking about. The girl spread her large black wings, telling him to stop. From her shadow, various monsters began to appear. She ordered them to attack. They were a magical breed of blood servants that were somewhat similar to doms or wolves. They immediately rushed to attack the enemy. However, the lich, having built a wall of summoned creatures, did not allow them to approach him. Eva, pointing a finger towards the enemy, ordered that his bones turn to ashes. A huge fireball formed in the air and flew towards the monsters. The main character watched everything that was happening in shock. There was an explosion, the column from which was visible above the forest. Yuma flew away towards the bushes, telling the girl that she had overdone it. However, he was horrified by what he saw. The lich remained completely unharmed, having summoned a servant with the help of dark magic. It was a creature of gigantic size, its shape resembling a dragon. The girl said that he had finally summoned something worthwhile. Otherwise, she had already begun to get bored. The dragon began to form something in its mouth. The protagonist realized that he was very dangerous. He decided to use a shield on the girl, which surprised her very much. At that moment, the dragon began its attack. This sent clouds of stones and dust flying through the forest. However, the girl remained unharmed. She thanked the guy. He thought that he hated being a burden, but he could do something too. The dragon and Eva were flying in the air, while the lich controlled the monster of the earth. The main character helped the girl with various protective spells. Eva hit the dragon with such force that it flew to the ground. The lich realized that the guy was using ancient magic. He was quite a dangerous servant, so he decided to start with him. Using dark magic, he began to summon new monsters from the crack in the ground. The girl realized that they were starting a new party. A new monster began to appear on the ground. This horrified the lich. After all, he realized that they had risen. Meanwhile, the girl did not stop. She was behind the enemy, ready to strike again. This was unexpected for him. He managed to turn around, protecting himself from her attack, but they did not stop. He summoned a dragon, which attacked from behind him. However, this time the main character was able to protect the girl by casting magic on her. Eva said that the fireball was not enough for the lizard. However, the next actions surprised the girl. The lich climbed onto the dragon and flew away. She followed him, not understanding where he was going. This shocked the protagonist. He asked her to wait. Later, he walked through the forest among the bushes, scared of literally every bug. He did not understand where the girl had gone. The ghost decided to help him. He pulled him by the clothes and showed him the direction where he needed to go. The guy asked him where he was leading him. After some time, they reached a large vacant lot, in the middle of which there was a black hole. Sitting down on its edge, the guy thought about what was there, but he was afraid to even look. So he just sat there on the edge, thinking in fear that it was very cold and he was not comfortable. Suddenly, something caught the ghost's attention. The guy looked around, trying to figure out where he was looking. Behind them was a giant creature with a mouth on top of its head, surrounded by black horns. The protagonist looked at it in shock. The creature slowly approached the guy. The main character realized that it was a huge zombified child. The guy fell to the ground, looking at it in shock. But at that moment, something flew out of the trees. It was Eva, who couldn't understand where the bone one had gone. She flew up to the guy and asked him why he was so pale. Crying, he told her that she had left him alone. The girl agreed with him and thought that something strange was happening in this forest. The miasma was to blame for all this. She said that the lich's goal was probably to create this zombie. However, the guy did not understand why he needed it. She replied that she had thought about it for a long time. With the help of souls alone, he could easily take over 1 or 2 cities. The amazed guy wanted to answer her something, but at that moment a leash appeared behind them. Eva told him that if anyone found out about it, he wouldn't do anything. The monster replied that they weren't bothering him. The protagonist asked him why he was doing this and what would happen when he created them. He replied that it seemed they had misunderstood. It was not he who created them. As he twirled his staff, monsters began to appear from all directions. They approached the small stone idols that were placed in various places. On each of their heads was a stone that began to glow. It formed a huge magic circle over the entire forest. The lich said that he was going to seal everyone here. The boy and girl were amazed by the size. Vortexes of energy began to form around the monsters. Eva understood what he was talking about. The magic literally blew away the protagonist, but did not harm him. However, it destroyed the monster. Sometime later, a large number of small children appeared in the place of the giant zombie child. They stretched their hands towards the lich. These were the souls of various children who had gathered around him, slowly moving into his staff. The protagonist watched as they all ended up inside him. He thought that the lich seemed so kind and broken to him. It was a very strange feeling. The guy continued to watch what was happening. Later, the lich turned to the boy and said that he would return to his peaceful sleep and was about to leave. Yuma asked him to wait, saying that he wanted to ask him something. He said they had taken custody of a child who had been turned into a ghoul by the church. Its owner was no longer alive, and the child was still being destroyed. So he wanted to ask the lich to take control of him. He swung his staff at him, causing the boy to tremble. The lich asked if he was telling the truth. Standing next to the boy, he told him that if he was lying, his remorse alone would not be enough. The boy looked at the monster in horror. He swallowed and said confidently that he was telling the truth. The girl and the ghost were watching their conversation. The lich told him to show it. Sometime later in the city near the temple, a large number of priests were doing their business. A man stood near a tree and listened to what the shadow behind the tree was telling him that everything was going as well as possible. He told her to wait for the signal. He understood his order and left. At that moment, a guy and a girl approached the man. The man said that thanks to his medicine, everyone in the city was healthy, including his daughter. They thanked him, bowing. Then he waved his hands and said that it was not worth the gratitude of the mayor. Suddenly, someone shouted at them to be careful. This startled the man, but the priest stood still, watching as the monster was impaled by spikes in the ground. The heroes said it was close. It was close. It was still dangerous here, so they had to go to the shelter. The girl with flowers in her hair and fairies circling around her added that they would rid this place of evil. The guy riding the monster frog said he wasn't with them. The priest smiled and said they were their heroes. He added ingratiatingly that before they could blink, they had wiped out the hordes of demons that had taken over the entire city. He was amazed at how strong they had become so quickly. The heroes replied that it was not worth it, and the girl remained silent, lowering her gaze. The priest added that he had good news for them. He said that they finally found out where Yuma was. The girl was very happy with his words. He put his hand on his chest and said that fortunately he was safe. However, according to their information, he was still controlled by a vampire. These words made them wary. Takuya remembered that she had held it in her hands back then. She had excellent combat skills and magic. It would be difficult for them to get it back. The priest said that they would therefore need to call for reinforcements. However, Gaita replied that they did not need them. Everyone turned towards him. Standing on the monster, he said that he would destroy her. That time, she was just lucky. He remembered how they had fought her before. Throwing the spear over his head, he said that they needed to go on their way. At this time, the protagonist walked, looking at the lich. All the monsters he encountered on the way looked at him in panic. However, he didn't care one bit. The boy was wondering why he was so worried. The lich came up to the bed and looked at the boy. Yuma said that this was the ghoul they were talking about. Suddenly, the monster knelt down in front of the bed and said that it was all his fault. The protagonist did not understand why he was doing this. He met this child in the distant past. At that time, in life, he was a holy father and served the country. His protege brought a stack of books and said that he brought materials, and the man asked him to put them down. As he was reading the book, the boy kept watching him, so he asked him if he wanted anything. He replied that he didn't want anything, it was just a great honor to be his assistant. The man replied that he did not need to be flattered. The boy beamed and replied that he was telling the truth. He had fought on the front lines during the war with the Demon King and was now helping the country by gathering information about the destruction. He added with even more enthusiasm that he was their property. The man asked him not to spoil the mood, and leaving, he said that he was going to the laboratory for a short while. As he walked down the street, the people present said that he was the wizard everyone was talking about. He was as beautiful as always. He could be recognized even from afar. He is popular, although a misanthrope. Many wanted to become his students, but he took no one. Being a loner is good in its own way. The man noticed a child sitting next to a flower bed. Approaching him, he asked what he was doing here. After examining it carefully, he realized that these were the clothes of a child who had recently arrived at the orphanage. He realized that the child was interested in the withered flowers. He extended his hand and used magic on the flowers, and after that they blossomed again. The man said that now they were blooming again. The child was amazed by what was happening. After that, he rubbed his eyes and, looking up, thanked the man with a bright smile. The man patted him on the head. The other children, noticing this, also ran up to him. Many days passed from that moment, and one day he noticed an unusual picture from the window. In the distance, behind the trees, a light was burning. He didn't understand why it was burning there, because there were abandoned warehouses there, so he decided to go and check what was going on there. He approached the building and looked inside. What he saw shocked him. In front of him were people who were conducting experiments on a child. Shocked, he asked what was happening. People were horrified that a holy father had come and asked him what he was doing there. The man watched in shock as the whole thing unfolded. A priest came up to him and, putting his hand on his shoulder, said that they were sorry. He added that although they would not have refused anyone's help, thanks to his research, the experiments began to bear fruit. After that, he used magic on him, saying that he had done a great job. This sudden attack caused him great pain, causing him to fall, hitting the chair. The priest ordered him to be carried away before he woke up. The man clenched his fist, thinking later that he wanted a peaceful life for this country. He began to rise to his feet through the pain, red drops running down his face. Gripping his staff tightly, he said angrily that he would never forgive them. Tears came to his eyes. Suddenly, an explosion occurred in the building, causing fragments to fly in all directions. The priests were surprised by this, not understanding what had happened. The man began to concentrate his magic, saying that he would incinerate them all. Flames blazed on all sides. The man was attacked by other priests who were going to destroy him. In the end, they achieved their goal. They loaded him into a cart, took him into the forest, and threw him into a pit. One of them said that the hole was almost full. Opening his eyes, the man saw in horror that there were a lot of other people around him. Putting his hand on the head of one of them, the man looked at what was happening and did not understand why they were doing this. His gaze began to fade. He thought about what he would never forgive. But time passed, and due to the magic and hatred inside him, he was reborn as a lich. When he climbed out of the pit, black energy spread in all directions. Later, those children absorbed his anger and rose up as zombies. And now they are free and can rest in eternal sleep. He created a magic circle over the ghoul, saying that it was his turn. A magic seal appeared on the boy's forehead. The lich announced that he was finished. The protagonist thanked him joyfully. Ava said that now he must give control to her, and after that he is free. After that, she asked the guy about what the boy will eat. He replied that he was immortal, so he could eat him. No need to worry about that. The lich repeated his words. Eva asked the guy why he trusted someone who destroyed children. Yuma clenched his fist and apologized. The girl replied that she didn't care, but rather found it amusing. She sat next to the boy lying on the bed. The protagonist answered her that no matter what happened, he would not abandon her. The girl smiled and answered that she would not abandon him either, and once again asked the lich to hand over control to her. He replied that he would never do that. This answer shocked the boy and the girl. He added that the child would remain under his control and the immortal would go with him. The hero does not understand what is happening. A woman does not evaluate what a man says in front of her as good. He says she's too old to listen. The girl gets irritated by his words. A hostile atmosphere appears between them, and the hero is very surprised by this. The guy asks if the man knows this child. The magician gives a positive answer. The woman asks, "So what?" and the guy is surprised by her words. She says that this is no reason to hand over Yuma. The man replies that an immortal man is very valuable. He turns to the boy, saying that with him he will need to eat much less flesh. The magician says that in his past life he studied the magic of the ancients, and if Yuma goes with him, he will teach him how to use it. He says that a vampire won't teach a hero such a thing, and the woman responds to him. She orders him to shut up and listen, asking why the mage is so persistent in arguing over Yuma. The hero tries to stop them. He suggests that they unite. The vampire and the mage scream that they won't do it. At this moment, the grandfather hears them. He hears some kind of signal. A creepy hand can be seen outside the window. Grandpa realizes that they are being invaded and decides to improve his disguise by ringing a bell. Suddenly, two guys appear, one with a sword, the other with a spear, and a girl with a book. The guy with the sword notes that the fog is very thick. The girl calls Eliel, saying that she will entrust this to her, and a little fairy emerges from the book. The fairy uses the highest level winds, air blast. Grandfather sees all this through the window. He comes to the quarreling heroes and says that they have guests. Yuma doesn't understand, thinking that they came from the church and look out the window. He is very surprised by what he sees. The hero does not understand why those three came. The guy is in a panic. He thinks they are at the wrong time. He turns to the vampire and the magician. Yuma says he has a plan. They go out into the street to the three warriors through the window. The woman tells the magician who will be the first to carry out Yuma's plan. The guy with the sword looks at the undead and tells Kotomi to cover them. The sorceress calls upon the magic of the spirit of light for protection. The spearman begins to threaten the vampire. By waving his weapon, he summons the highest level of fire magic, the flames of the underworld. A tornado of fire flares up around the vampire. The attacker says that he thought the undead would hold out better against fire and would quickly win, but a vampire suddenly appears behind him saying that it was a fake, which surprises the magician. He quickly attacks with his spear, but the woman holds him back. She says that this is the second time she has found herself behind his back, and the guy is starting to get angry. Kita jumps away from her and says she's about to get it. His partner calls his name. The lich says he'll deal with the guy with the sword. However, he says that he will freeze the undead. He uses the highest level ice magic, ice shards, and seals the man in ice. The guy notices something black in front of him. The undead summoned a servant of death, a poisonous slime. He says it was a great icebreaker. The lich wants to deal with the assistants and summons zombies on Kotomi. A huge plant grows from the ground and stops the monsters. The girl thanks the fairy dryad for this. The leash is outraged by this and at this time swings a weapon at him, which greatly surprises the man. The guy with the sword hits the undead with ice magic, saying that he made a mistake by hurting his sister. Yuma watches the battle through the window, worried if everything is okay. A zombie flies through the open window, but something stops it. The hero is very surprised by this. He asks his grandfather how the monster entered through the window, to which he receives the answer not to worry, because the protective field will not allow anyone from outside to attack them. The guy calms down, and the man says that he will go out just in case to protect the building. Yuma apologizes for getting him involved in this, to which his grandfather tells him not to worry and adds that, however, spirits can easily pass through that field. He tells the boy to be careful. The hero looks at him with confusion, but then notices a sprout on the window behind him. The hero with the sword is thrown back by the blow. He looks at the lich with a huge snake and thinks that he is stronger than everyone they have encountered before. He watches Keith fight the vampire and worries about him. A large tree appears between him and the undead. Kotomi comes out of the plant towards the guy. She says that the mission is accomplished and they need to leave. The guy obeys and takes out his sword. He swings his weapon and a block of ice appears between Gate and the vampire. The magician, holding his partner by the shoulder, says that they are leaving. Kita yells at him to get out of the way, but his friend tells him to cool it. The swordsman says that they didn't come there for revenge and that he should forget about it for at least a second. Kita gets very angry about this, stabbing his spear into the ground. He summons the highest level of fire magic, the Firebird. The vampire is surprised by the large bird and tells the flying Gate to come back, to which he tells her to shut up and threatens her that next time she will turn to ashes and expects to burn her. 3 mages disappear. The lich says they ran away, and the woman says they are all weaklings. She wanted to brainwash them when they were exhausted. The man tells her that it's not the best option and it wouldn't help the plan. The vampire replies that he would have killed them and subjugated them anyway, and it wouldn't have worked at all. She says she'll do it another time, but suddenly notices something. The woman does not feel Yuma, and in the room where the guy was, tree branches grew on the walls and floor. The lich looks at the plant and asks if this is the effect of using perfume, remembering Kotomi's magic. The vampire starts to get very angry. She says that she skillfully subjugated them. Grandfather turns to her and asks if she has forgotten what Yuma said. The guy said that strangers came from outside, and 89 out of 10 they are the target. The lich asks if this is a church troop, and the hero replies no. He says he doesn't think it has anything to do with them, so he'd like to hear the whole situation from them. Ava tells him to go downstairs. She wants to relax a bit, and Yuma asks them to be as quiet as possible. Lee asks why he is covering for them, since they are enemies. He says that there is nothing special, and that those people like him are conscripts, and they are comrades who came from the same world. He remembers how they used to spend time together. Yuma sadly says that only his comrades miss their homeland, so he wants to end everything peacefully. Debus says he won't forget Yuma's experiences. Eva tells him that he noticed it. Grandfather tells her that in the building there are spirits and their owners, it's all the same. The vampire says she will help once, and Debus thanks her. She turns to Calcium, saying that she will bring Yuma back. Leaving with the woman, Lich says that as soon as he finds the guy earlier, he will be taken care of immediately. She asks him to shut up. The robber tells the Tide Man that otherwise he will suffer the same fate as the adventurers lying around them. He mocks them, and suddenly Eva appears behind him. The bandits are very surprised by her attack. One of them tells his comrades to fight back. They attack the vampire, but she quickly deals with them all. The defeated man says the woman is too strong. She mockingly tells them to get some sleep. The adventurers are surprised at how quickly Eva dealt with the bandits and ask who she is, thinking that she is an adventurer of the highest rank. The vampire approaches one of them and the guy tries to thank her, but she interrupts him, saying that gratitude is not needed, to which he is surprised looking at her. Eva spread her wings and tells them to go to work. The adventurers talk about what happened to them in a church in a northern city. The lich behind her says that if there is a coat of arms engraved on the church, then there is probably a group of priests staying there. Eva remembers that she never saw them. She asks the magician if the priests are strong. The man replies that they cannot compare with the royal army, but there is still one. The strength of this man was recognized by the king himself. He possesses many years of sacred magic, and the lich thinks that the undead can be defeated in a fight with him. Eva notes that the magician knows a lot. He replies that he had some connections during his lifetime. The lich asks the vampire why she is so protective of Yuma. As far as he knows, the only thing she has left in her memory is the memory of being sealed under the church. He says he thought she was bored with this world. Ava replies that she is searching. The lich asks what she is looking for. She replies that she is looking for something. The mage asks if she is laughing at him, and the vampire replies that she is not. The woman says that she only hopes for Yuma, because this is her first bond. Lich speculates that the reason for this ancient vampire's move is the so-called search for something. He says that greed is only for show. Yuma wakes up in the room, not understanding what he is doing there. Kita is sitting next to him and his partner is standing. He is surprised, stuttering, calling Kaita Akasaka, but he hits him saying that he is Akanashi. Another guy apologizes to Yuma, saying that his friend is not in a good mood right now. The hero asks about the location of Eva and everyone else. Kita, hearing the vampire's name, begins to get very angry. The guy next to Yuma laughs and says that his comrade is glad that they are returning. He says that a little later, a priest from the church will examine the hero. Yuma shouts to them that he is returning to Eva. His friends are surprised by this, and Kita says that apparently the hero has been brainwashed. The guy loudly denies his assumption. He tells them that his comrades have been deceived, and do they know what the church really does? Akanashi replies that he only believes his own eyes. He adds that his eyes only see how people suffer because of monsters. The guy says that monsters bring only fear and death. Yuma looks at his friends in surprise. Kita tells him that he too will soon be cleansed, and his eyes will be opened, and that until then the hero should sit still. Yuma squeezes his hand tightly and thinks that he is angry with himself because he can't say a word. Imagining Eva, he hopes that she will be nearby. The unknown man, looking at the magic ball that shows the main trinity that defeated the monster, says that this time the conscripts are all talented. He says that he couldn't hold Yuma for 3 days until the last time and was left as just material. However, compared to true conscripts, they are worthless. Another unknown man throws his leg on the table and says that a weed is a weed, and it is better to pull it out by the roots before it becomes overgrown and becomes a problem. A man sitting on the ground asks if they have forgotten about the scarlet vampires. The unknown person says that he has no desire to be in partnership with them. The guy who came to them addresses them as priests and says that he has completed his preparations. The man at the table thanks him and invites the others to go on their way. He says against the background of a man with a scar and an earring, a man with a bandage, that they are the righteous of God and in the name of humanity, so that they rejoice in what will become an offering. The man himself has different eyes. Kotomi stands in the hallway, clasping her hand, and a fairy sits on her shoulder. The girl uses magic to pass by people without them seeing her. She is glad that she was not found. Kotomi remembers seeing Yuma and the rumors that he was brainwashed. However, the girl saw Kurokuze's desperate face and realized that there was something wrong with his reaction. When she comes to the library, she is surprised by the large number of books. Kotomi thinks that among all these books, there must be information about monsters and information about the church. She goes through and reads many books, but understands that there is nothing that is so interesting for her. However, the heroine notices that her fairy is looking at some book on the shelf. She asks if everything is okay, and the magical creature points to the shelf. Kotomi feels a breeze among the books with her hand and pulls out one of them. The shelves suddenly move apart, and a dark room is visible between them. The girl is very surprised by the secret door, thinking that she has only seen something like this in movies. Having regained consciousness, she decides to go there. As she descends the stairs, the sorceress reflects that the answers she seeks may be there. Guy suddenly enters Yuma's room, saying that they came for him. The frightened hero thinks that if he teleports from there, he will be able to do something. But without finishing his thought, he realizes something. His friend turns to him and asks if everything is okay. Kurokuze realizes that he can now use magic and tells his comrade that everything is okay. He thinks about playing along, looking around and assessing the situation. Kita watches Yuma as he follows the unknown man. The hero notices that 3 guys with guns are walking behind him. They approach the door, and the man tells the hero that the priest is waiting for him there. Entering the room, Yuma is greeted by a priest. He says he was looking forward to the opportunity to talk to him and that it was a great honor for him. The man with the different eyes introduces himself as the high priest of the central church, Richt. He tells Kurokuze to come next to him. Richt suggests that the guy gets straight to the point. When the guy got close to the priest, he said that he heard that he could use ancient magic. A frightened Yuma creates a barrier around himself. He realizes that he released some magic out of fear. Richt touches the barrier and says that the hero's protection has slightly different properties. The man takes out Yuma's pendant and challenges him to watch him go on the offensive. The hero, seeing the pendant, cannot understand when his spirit was stolen. Richt asks if this is his familiar. The frightened Kurokuze does not understand how the man already knows about his little ghost and thinks that he must return it before something happens. He uses teleportation with only his hands and tries to reach the spirit, but the priest quickly dodges his grabs and Yuma is shocked by his reaction speed. The priest pierces the boy's barrier with a magic spear. The hero is very surprised by this, and the man tells him that he is distracted. He says that it seems Yuma still doesn't understand the true nature of ancient magic. Adding that relying only on feelings makes magic unstable, he suggests trying to put all your efforts into it. Kurokuze doesn't understand why Riktu is doing this, but decides to take action when he has the chance. The priest uses magic on the guy and tells him to try to counterattack. Yuma uses teleportation magic to attack the man. He tells himself to concentrate, and teleporters appear around the priest, directing his magic towards him. Rich realizes that this is a magical copy and dodges the attack, realizing that it is still his own magic. He realizes that the copying was just an illusion. The priest says that this is quite interesting magic, and at this time Yuma comes out of one of the portals, trying to get his ghost from the man's hand. However, he removes his hand with the pendant saying that it is still not good enough. The real Yuma suddenly emerges from another portal and snatches his spirit from the priest. He is happy that he succeeded, but falls to the ground, rolling across the floor. Richt tells him that the magic the boy wields has no specific form, so its possibilities are limitless, and in order to use it well, you first need to understand it. He opens the book lying on the table. The priest says he will provide knowledge about their history. Opening the page with the image, he says that this is a microcosm of the world they live in. He will tell about people, monsters, and gods. Both humans and animals live on Earth, and the balance between them is guarded by the gods. If it were not for the gods, humans would undoubtedly have been completely destroyed many centuries ago. The reason is that for monsters, people are nothing more than cattle. And at that time, man had no way to protect himself from them, so the gods taught man to perform summoning ceremonies. However, among all the monsters, the most terrifying of them all are the vampires, like the one Yuma traveled with. The pure reds are especially strong. In the past, their rampage was endless. Having soaked the earth with crimson blood, they became known as the pure red blood. Richt tells the boy that this is the history of their land and the one he is traveling with. And in saying this, he does not deny that the actions taken against Yuma were too far and unforgivable. He himself did not believe his ears when he heard it. Richt assures the boy that they will be punished, and in return, he would like Kurokuze to join them. The hero remembers bad people and Eve and thinks that it's all a lie. He understands that no matter what reasons the church gives, the suffering he had to endure was a real nightmare. Yuma realizes that from the simple life of his original world and the time he spent with Eva, all he saw was only her. He says out loud that this is probably how Akinshi felt at that time. Rick doesn't understand what he's talking about. The hero says that even if everything the priest said was true, he is not the kind of child who accepts everything without question. At this time, someone appears behind Katomi, who is reading a book. Yuma adds that although he may regret not listening to him, even then he still wants to be by Eva's side. Richt, closing the book, says that now it is annoying, but he respects the guy's determination. So he wants to tell him one last thing. The priest wants to tell the truth about Yuma's power. Rich says he's seen a lot of people over the years, but Yuma is definitely the most special. All because the hero is the only one chosen by the goddess herself. The guy does not understand what kind of goddess she is, and the priest answers him that it is she who blessed him with her gift. Kurokuze says he has no idea what the man is talking about. Yuma says he heard about the blessing when they were first called there. However, he had never seen this goddess. Rick tells him that he looks confused and that this is understandable, because after all, he has not yet awakened, and opens the box with the crystal. Taking the artifact in his hands, he shows it to the guy, saying that this is the key to awakening his power. He adds that, with its help, Yuma will find out why the goddess chose him and will understand the whole truth about himself. He gives the key to the hero voluntarily, and whether he accepts it or not is up to him to decide. Kurokuze takes the crystal from the priest. Someone calls the man over and whispers something in his ear. Surprised by the information, Richt apologizes to Yuma, saying that urgent matters have come up. He, getting ready to take the book, says that he will send a messenger who will return the guy back, and, until then, asks to wait in this room. The hero abruptly places the crystal on the book and loudly stops the priest. He says that if Richt holds a high position in the church, then can he put an end to the experiments on people? The man replies that, as far as this goes, there are other priests besides him who are responsible for this, so he has no real power over this matter, and they are sure that they are doing this for the greater good. Yuma asks if he will not stop his colleagues from going wild, justifying himself with the highest good, and adds that this is his degree of some kind of justice. Richt tells him that not everything is so simple, and eventually the time will come when he too will understand. The hero replies that even if he didn't understand, he shouldn't give up. The priest puts his hand on the boy's shoulder and says that he understands what he feels. He assures that he will do his best on his part, and sincerely hopes that Yuma will not give up. The priest leaves with the unknown man, and he says that if the head priest finds out that Richt allowed the subject to escape, it will be a problem, but the man interrupts, saying that nothing will happen. He says that his gaining power is convenient for him and sets Yuma free. The man is impatiently waiting for what Kurokuze will prepare for him. At this time, in that room, the hero looks at the key he received in his hands. He is ready for anything that this crystal will do, and the artifact begins to glow. The key releases a large amount of magic around Yuma, causing him to be greatly surprised. The guards at the entrance to the church discuss how the higher-ups have been quite frightening lately, and about the people's power-ups, as well as rumors that a major war is coming. They discuss that empowering people is one thing, but recently the higher-ups have been running around calling people up and are now focusing on military force, adding that the newly arrived swordsmen look a bit scary, but they are interrupted by unknown people. The man and woman say that they have arrived by invitation and ask to be let in. The guard doesn't understand what invitation they are talking about because he hasn't heard anything about it. An unknown person approaches him and whispers something. The surprised guard apologizes and allows them to enter. The people in the suits turn out to be Eva and the lich, and the woman complains about why she has to dress like him, to which she is told that she said they had to sneak in and not to complain about the disguise. The lich uses illusion magic to make himself look human. The vampire says that next time she wants to dress up as a pair with Yuma and they could look like twins. While wandering around the church, the woman hears some sounds and looks back. She is very surprised by something. Eva feels some kind of presence. Yuma's friends don't understand why Kotomi hasn't returned yet and where she could have gone. One of them asks why those monsters went so far as to brainwash Yuma. He says it could be that they decided to use the power of summoning or perhaps for some other reason. The guy asks what Kita thinks about this, but he is thinking hard about something. His friend notes this and pats him on the head, and Kita asks him to shut up. Some man enters their room. Kotomi enters the room with a teddy bear in her hands. Her friend comes up to her saying that they were very worried and asks where she was. She unclenches her hand with the bear, causing it to fall, but a plant appears around the girl's palm, around Kotomi, greatly shocking his comrades. It hits Takuya and tries to attack Keita, but he quickly dodges the attack. He asks the girl what happened to her. Keita orders him to answer. The girl cannot say a word because of weakness. The guy sees that she is conscious but does not understand what is happening because this is not like her at all. Plants begin to sprout on the floor next to the young man. They grab him, tie his hands, and throw him to the ground. He tries to get out, realizing that he has weakened his defenses. Eva appears behind him, saying she is glad to see him again, calling him a little rascal, and chops down the plants around him with her wings. Kita yells, asking what she is doing here, and the irritated vampire says that he doesn't thank her even after saving her. However, she adds that he needs to thank Yuma, because if he had not been worried about him, she would not have come to his aid. The guy looks at her in surprise. Eva looks at the destruction and the bear, saying that they are behaving like children. She turns to the toy and asks how long he is going to play hide-and-seek, to which the bear replies that she did notice. Mask comes out of the toy, saying, "Why is the monster even there, calling it a nuisance?" The black mask turns out to be a man with a scar and earrings, and he continues to say that he hates trouble. Eva tells him that he is a big boy, and Kita looks at him in surprise. The guy says he saw him asking if he was the fourth high priest, and why he did that to Kotomi. The priest tells the young man to stop whining. The man says he has OCD, and when weeds like these start to grow too big, they start to attract pests, so he came to supposedly weed his garden, and there is a monster called Kotomi standing behind him. Kita yells, asking what the priest means, and if they don't work with the church, to which he says the guy is pathetic. He adds that this is why it irritates him. The priest says that the calls are nothing more than tools. Kotomi's body tightly, and Kita asks it to stop. The man asks if they have forgotten who pulls the strings of this little puppet. He says that he had been watching them from the beginning, looking for an opportunity to eliminate them, so it was about time that Kotomi started spying around. Kita shouts her friend's name, and the priest suggests a battle between the friends. The plant attacks the guy, but he quickly dodges. Eva tells him that isn't he in a difficult situation and offers her help. The young man asks what was the point of everything they did. The priest mockingly says that everything they did was just playing the hero, adding that this is what it means when a person does not believe in his own sense of justice, turning to Kita. The vampire says it's disgusting and spreads her wings. She says this is her first meeting with a priest and asks if they are all like this man. Eva asks him to explain why children behave arrogantly and bossily towards other children, to which the priest replies that any call not chosen by the goddess is worthless. He says that those who have no value are nothing more than weeds that need to be pulled out. Eva laughs at his answer and says that she has encountered many cheeky children lately, but he has proven to be a winner. She scolds Kita, telling him to say something too. The vampire helps the guy dodge the blow by grabbing him and jumping back. She asks where all his passion went, and the guy tells her to shut up. The angry priest realizes from the bat's wings that she is a vampire, and thinks that after this he will have to put the guards in order. Suddenly, everything around starts to shake violently. Everyone in the room is surprised by this, and Eva thinks it's an earthquake. The priest understands that something has awakened, but at the wrong time because of his situation. After thinking about it, he quickly runs out of the room. The vampire, ready for battle, asks if there are no brave men there, and she wants to see Yuma as soon as possible. She notices that the monster has something sticking out and understands everything. Eva takes Kita's head and says that she will lend him her eyes, and asks him to look carefully. The guy's eyes change to vampire-like. The woman asks if he sees the pin and says that if he gets rid of it, Kotomi will return to normal. However, he will have to do something about the monster's huge legs. She says that he can use fire magic and he needs to burn them. If she tries, there's unlikely to be anything left of Kotomi. Dodging the blows, Eva says that as soon as the guy burns his legs, she will take the chance to get rid of the pin. She asks him not to miss his chance, but Kita doesn't answer. The vampiress starts to get irritated and pulls at his clothes. She tells him that if he doesn't want to regret this moment, he needs to act now. The woman throws it right at the monster, telling him to think about it later. Kita uses magic to burn the plant in midair. Kotomi is freed, and a pin is visible on the back of her neck. Eva catches the girl and pulls out the pin. Kotomi loses consciousness. Kita quickly catches her friend on the ground. The vampire says that everything is okay now. The guy thanks her. As she leaves, the woman says that if he needs anything, he knows where to find her and says goodbye. Kita apologizes to his injured friends, saying that he is still so weak. In the hallway, Eva reflects that she thought she sensed Yuma, but ended up getting distracted. She thinks that maybe it was someone else's work, because the auras were mixed up and it was difficult to determine where Yuma was and wonders what they were planning. She looks at the half-open door and is surprised by what she sees. Entering the room, the vampire says that she completely forgot. The woman sees Yuma lying in a large, magical hand and says that the condition for using magi is ancient magic. The guy has patterns all over his body and face. Kurokuze appears in the village as a ghost, and he does not understand what happened to him. Looking around, he asks where he is, but for some reason, this place seems familiar. Suddenly, a huge creature appears in front of the guy, scaring away the residents. He is surprised by this and sees someone on the monster's shoulder and recognizes this person. Yuma wakes up on Eva's lap. She greets him and asks if he had a good dream. The guy notices that she's wearing glasses. He quickly gets up and asks how he fell asleep, and the vampire points to the thing in front and says that without a doubt it is all because of her. Kurokuzu looks at the large, levitating hand. He is scared by this, but suddenly feels pain. The hero grabs his heart and realizes that it is as if in a death grip, he cannot breathe and everything is blurry. He's in a lot of pain, and Eva hugs him. She calms him down by telling him to breathe slowly. The woman says that this hand is not an enemy, but on the contrary, his ally. Adds that the pain will go away as soon as the guy calms down. Yuma calms down and the hand disappears. He notices the disappearance, and Eva says that this is what he caused, and the guy is surprised by this. The woman tells him that, a long time ago, she heard that a person who uses magi is one who can use attributeless magic. He remembers the huge creature, thinking that it was using magi, like that thing he saw in his dream. Yuma asks how he should use magi. Eva tells him not to even think about it, because using magi is an order of magnitude higher than all other types of magic, and to do this, he will have to undergo extremely dangerous trials. The guy asks her to tell him how to do it, and assures her that he will get through it. The vampire replies that he understands that even without using magi, he still has her. Yuma tells her that he has always been afraid of regretting something in his life, and that is why he's been running away from everything until now. But now, if he does not look himself in the face, he will regret it for the rest of his life. Iba replies that he must understand that this test will be much more painful than anything and asks if he is sure he is ready. He gives her a positive answer. In another room in the church, Lich, having disabled some guards, looks through various documents. He remembers with irritation how Eva suggested that they sneak in there in disguise and how she left him thinking she was going to Yuma. The magician complains about her, saying that she no longer understands the meaning of words. He lays out the papers, telling himself that this is almost all the information he could get. The man reflects that this place is not just an institution, and that documents from various other institutions are collected there in huge quantities. He realizes that something is wrong and looks at one of the papers. Lich notices that if you look closely, there are signs that something is hidden. One of the guards barely wakes up, not understanding what he is doing there, and the magician grabs him by the head. The man, using magic, says that he will have to ask directly. He walks into the room, noticing what was hidden. Lich looks around, saying that they are conducting a large-scale experiment. The magician sees that there is something behind her. He is surprised by what he sees, because in front of him is a magi, a huge creature in chains, and he asks himself why something so dangerous is stored under the streets of the city. The man thought that it was hard to detect the presence there, but it must be because of the barrier that was set up to keep the thing a secret. He says that if he were alive, he would turn pale at the sight of this. Behind him was the same guard, but on his face was the Lich's magic, and he ordered him to speak. The guy tells him that this magi was found along with the underground ruins 10 years ago, adding that after investigation they came to the conclusion that it was a magi from the moon feeding on Muggles. Lich realizes that the reason the church wanted Yuma was to gather all of Magi. He asks what the church plans to do with Magi, to which he receives the answer that this is done to eat all the Magi in the world and destroy all magical beasts, and then the world will belong only to humanity. The magician asks if these are the words of one of the chief priests, and the guard says no, and the man asks who then, to which he receives the answer that it is from the high priest of the first rank, Risht Alba Lorenz. Lich says he knew it was his doing. He understands that male willpower, and at the core of it all, is darkness strong enough to eclipse the sun. The man recalls that while he was still working in the church, when he first met Richt, he sensed something dangerous in him. He says that it doesn't matter anymore, because at the moment he has to worry about the Magi moon. If everything goes according to the church's plan, and all the Muggles disappear, then the power of the 4 great spirits of the seasons will disappear. And with this, the world will quickly collapse. Lich muses that there is still a lot he doesn't know, and if he can find out what exactly their plan is, he can do something. However, someone notices him and interrupts him. A church worker tells the man that the area is closed to outsiders. The guy asks if he came through the Human Potential Enhancement program, and it seems to him that he saw the Lich somewhere and suddenly realizes something. He calls the magician a great instructor. The man pins the worker against the wall and tells him that he has no time for communication. The guy says that, as expected from a great instructor, even death will not stop him from returning. He tells the Lich to offer himself for the common good. The man says that the one who leaked his research to the others was this guy. He warns the worker to leave the church while he can, as their methods are nothing but poison to him. The guy laughs and says that if it's for the good, he's willing to take a little poison, or anything for that matter. He asks Lich if he thinks the same, since he fought at the front. The magician is silent, and the worker asks if he said something wrong. The man squeezes his hand and orders him to be quiet, and a scythe-like magic appears behind him. The Lich tells the boy that he will free him and tells him to rest while swinging his scythe, and the worker gets scared by this. The man cuts the column behind which they were hiding without touching the guy. The worker is in fear, and Lich says that he was always too serious, adding that therefore, if he wants to save the world, then he must not lose himself, and tells the guy to be strong. The man says that the church now is not at all like it was before, and seeing him, he is sure that allowing them to move freely will only create danger. That's why now he wants to destroy this building. The Lich asks the worker if he knows where the exit is, but the guy remains silent. The man leans towards him and takes his face, repeating his question again. The guy replies that he knows. The magician asks him to stretch out his hands and creates a small creature there that looks like a rabbit. He says that it is Skal and that he is weak and has no fighting ability. The man wants the boy to get him out of here safe and sound for him. The lich says that he gives this to him as his ancestor, and this is his last order. Looking at the creature, the worker says that he understands everything. He quickly leaves the room and the magician begins to call upon his magic. The man takes his true form and cleanses the place, calling it cursed. A large number of monsters appear around him. The church workers run away from the creatures, saying it is an emergency, that an intruder has been discovered, and orders have been given to deal with him immediately. The stranger, looking at the destruction, does not understand what is happening. Lich speculates that moving Magi without awakening is impossible, but if the facility is simply destroyed as is, he doubts the church will simply give up. He says that in that case, he will simply fill the place with a thick fog of miasma. This is necessary to ensure that nothing living can get inside. A magical creature suddenly appears around the lich and swirls him. It was the third chief priest, and he says that he will not allow the magician's plans to happen. The lich tells him that Magi is not something the church should have at its disposal and orders the priest to surrender or die. The guy replies that whatever happens in the big thing, he doesn't care. However, he cannot allow the pests to roam free. The lich asks menacingly if humans are no longer intelligent. He suggests starting small and summons a multitude of zombies that attack the priest. The guy dodges their attacks. The big monster will also suddenly attack, but will quickly lose in one hit. The monster comes out of the corner even more, which frightens the priest. The young man orders to destroy it, and the monster dies. He summoned his puppet. The lich says that with such trash, the priest will not be able to cope with his monsters. The guy says that he is not interested in playing against a dead man, to which he receives the answer that it is interesting. The magician never played with dolls, even as a child. The evil priest suggests ending it already. He opens the scarred eye, telling it to activate the artificial eye. Magic comes out of it. The lich does not understand what kind of eye it is. From the magic, another puppet is formed, and the man realizes that the fundamental qualities of the priest's magic are changing. The puppet has activated its night doll combat mode. She quickly heads towards the lich. The guy controls her attacks, and the doll copes with all the monsters. The man speculates that the priest managed to increase his magical power through the artificial eye. He becomes interested and uses a lot of magic. The priest casts a shield on the puppet, and it is protected from the flow of magic. However, some particle still touches it, and a scratch appears on the guy's hand. Lich notices this. He asks why fight magic that is equally harmful to oneself. The priest replies that if it helps him achieve his goal, he will do anything. The doll suddenly appears in front of the man, and he is surprised by its speed. However, something falls on the puppet. The lich does not understand what happened, and the priest feels great pain. The magician sees Yuma and a huge hand heading the enemy. He says it's impossible, but Ava, who has flown in from behind, denies his words. The priest, bending over in pain, sees this hand. He cannot believe what he sees and asks himself if it is from an object. The vampire offers to testify to her resolve, and Yuma hovers over her hand. The lich says he will witness the hero's decision, but sees only a one-armed Magi. He asks if the boy has yet to undergo the necessary tests and worries about what might happen to him if he is not careful. However, Eva says that everything is fine. The woman says that she is more reliable than all the gods there. The vampire, when she was in the room, suggested that he conduct a small test. The guy asks again, to which Ava replies that it is a church building, so even if he completely destroys it, it's okay. She adds that pushing her limits can be dangerous, but just in case Yuma gets out of control, she will deal with it. Kurokuze bows down and says that he has hopes for her. Eva lifts his head and says that she will teach him one thing, that Magi responds to the strong feelings of the users, and in connection with this, she wants to ask him a question. She asks what is the worst-case scenario for him. Suddenly, the vampire falls on his shoulder, and someone in front of him tells him to run. Eva says that she hopes nothing happens, and Yuma gains power, and a Magi hand appears above him. The priest pulls the puppet out from under his arm and directs it to attack Yuma. Before he could do this, the doll was grabbed by a hand again. Eva supports Kurokuze with encouraging words. He realizes that he hears her voice in the distance. The boy fears that all his strength is leaving him to remain conscious, and if he does not concentrate, his consciousness will plunge into the abyss. He thinks that he should focus on the enemy. Yuma, with his hand behind him, turns towards the priest. The lich says that it seems like the hero definitely has control over Magi. Eva tells him not to get in Yuma's way, adding that it is the adult's job to sit and watch children grow up. The mage asks if she tries to be a mother to the guy, to which she replies that for her, everyone is mostly children. The man says that he is not as young as a child and calls upon some kind of magic. The priest, controlling the doll, tries to cope with the big hand. He realizes it is Magi, thinking it is just an incomplete, single hand. He takes out the weapon that was tied to his leg. The boy remembers how, as a child, a woman with a bandage around her head and one eye told him that he should not cry because she and her sister had made an oath. She said that they serve God and protect people and tells him to wipe the tears from his eyes. He told her that he would become strong enough to protect her. The priest remembers how he used puppets to destroy monsters, telling them to fight even harder. He came to the doctor, who said that the amount of magical energy in some people is simply predetermined and cannot be increased. A church worker greets him saying that they recently completed research on increasing magical energy using the collected eye of the summoned and distributed them to the priests, but one remained. He approaches Eiji, asking if he would like to become a priest. The priest perceived those called as strangers and those whom they should not protect, and in order to achieve their goal, there should be no hesitation. He did it for his sister and for the future she hoped for. Eiji throws the weapon up in the air, and it hangs in the air. It releases magic, which surprises Eva. The weapon forms armor on the priest, like his puppet, and the guy thinks he can deal with the trash. The vampire says what she hopes for when the puppeteer himself becomes a puppet. Eiji attacks Yuma and cuts off Magi's arm. Lich says that despite Magi being flawed, it still managed to hit the target. The priest continues his multiple attack on the arm. It hits Yuma, cutting him. The guy wonders if it works. Kurokuze's flesh returns back, causing the priest to become irritated. Yuma quickly recovers from the blow. Eiji, looking at this, says that this is the blessing of immortality and that it is difficult for him to think of it as a human. Kurokuze realizes that he is starting to react slowly to his movements and is being held back by his own consciousness. He looks at Eva and decides to let him dive in. Yuma goes deeper, and the vampire, realizing what is happening, simply smiles. She wishes him luck, and the guy begins a complete transformation. Yuma grew an extra-large arm, and his clothes grew onto his body. Eva is surprised by his appearance, saying that it seems that even a Magi user changes his appearance. The lich tells her that even if she is over 1,000 years old, there are still things she doesn't know. He adds that Magi users are the link between humans and demons, and thus, their appearance becomes intermediate between humans and demons. This is one of their abilities. Moreover, this existence is closer to the existence of gods, which makes other people also want their power. They once hoped and looked for Magi users who would lend a helping hand to save humanity. However, Lich says that all this is nothing more than a legend recorded in old records. He says it's time for him to go, adding that Eva can take care of the rest herself. She replies that she was going to do it without him. Eiji throws his weapon towards Yuma, but he dodges it. However, the weapon wraps around the hero's body. The priest throws the guy into the wall. He summons large boulders with magic and commands them to strike. They fall upon Yuma, and Eva watches all this. However, the hero emerges without a single wound. He touches the broken column and places a seal on it. Kurokuze pushes her at the priest with full force. Because of this, the roof of the church breaks, which frightens the city's residents. The vampire is surprised by the large hole, and Eiji is badly hurt by the impact. Hanging in the air above the city, he does not believe everything that happened and thinks that if he continues to fight, it will damage everything that his older sister worked so hard for. Yuma suddenly appears above him, shocking him. The priest quickly moves away from him. He tells the guy to catch him. Eiji knows that if he uses his eye too much, it could be deadly, but he doesn't have time to worry about that now. He stops and summons an artificial eye to strengthen his magical power. The man coughs up blood, thinking that his veins have burst. However, he tells himself to hold on, because if he doesn't, then he will never reach the same level as Richt. Yuma repeats the word enemy and extends his large hand towards Eiji. The priest aims his weapon at him with all his might in response to Kurokuze's attack, causing a huge sound wave to appear. Eiji tells himself to hold on a little longer, but an image of Yuma appears in his head telling him to run. All of the man's armor suddenly disappears, and he sees a large fist coming towards him. The priest is thrown far away from the powerful blow to the ground. A badly wounded Eiji lies near the destroyed rock. Yuma approaches him, swinging his fist at him. The man, ready to strike, closes his eyes, but a voice is heard addressing Kurokuze, saying that it was too strong. Eva stops his hand and says that if he does a little more, he will only hurt himself. She adds that he should wait for the right moment. The vampire says it's time for Yuma to go home. Kurokuze doesn't notice the woman, looking only at Eiji. A large hand dissolves in front of Eve and moves towards the priest. He strikes at him, but the vampire quickly flies away, holding Eiji in her hands. He tells her that this thing cannot be stopped, adding that it is only by the whim of monsters that many people die. Eva, letting down her hair, says that he is still talkative. She suggests that they just sit and watch what Yuma can do, calling him a little boy. Kurokuze heads towards them. The vampire wants to stop him, but the guy quickly heads towards where she is holding Eiji. She tries to stop Yuma again, but he quickly turns back. He tries to grab the priest, and Eva wonders if he is too fast. She thinks that at this rate the guy's mind will blur and fly away from him. The woman thinks about what to do and notices a lich on the ground. She lands next to him and asks what he wants. Yuma lands in front of them. Eiji again, but Lich stops him. The man asks Eva if she didn't tell him to take care of it. She scolds him and tells him to give her a break. She yells at him and asks him not to be so stingy and to help her keep Yuma. Lich replies that he wanted to give the guy some rest. He raises his staff and calls to the guy lying on the bed, asking him for help. This young man appears before the man and Eve. She turns to Eiji and repeats his words that Yuma cannot be stopped, adding that all of Kurokuze's companions in their world are all undead, and begins to smile. She asks if he has forgotten that all of them there cannot die. The summoned boy grabs Yuma, and they fly away to the sky. The hero breaks free by twisting the enemy's limbs. Lich says it takes a lot of strength just to fight back. He adds that they can't let Kurokuze go, and restores the boy's limbs, and she captures the Manga user again. The young man takes the tree with his hands and throws Yuma far away with his feet. While the hero is flying, he notices Eiji in the forest. He tells himself that he must destroy and stabs the priest with his big hand. However, the man transforms into Eva, and she hugs Yuma, saying that he's been caught. She asks him to come back to her. Yuma stands in the darkness and opens his eyes. A little ghost is pulling at his hair. The spirit calls the boy to follow him to the light. Kurokuze sees Eva and calls her away. She turns to him with a smile. The vampire extends her hand and calls him home. The guy doesn't understand where to go. He follows her, wondering in his head where his home is. Yuma, in human form, wakes up in Eve's arms with a ghost clinging to him from behind. The hero says that he feels as if he has always known Eva. The woman smiles and replies that when they made the pact, she felt like the taste of his blood made her feel nostalgic, and she doesn't know why because there are huge gaps in her memory. She says she is glad he has returned home. Yuma thanks her and hugs her back. The summoned guy approached them, and Eva tells Kurokuze that he just fell asleep, causing a big mess. The magician says that the lunar magi that the church was hiding was a surface shell. The vampire wonders what the church is hunting for if it is hiding the magi shell. The man replies that it seems to him that something is happening in the church itself. He says they must leave before reinforcements arrive, and Eva asks if they will leave together. After a silence, Lich replies that he needs her to keep the boy under control, and she agrees with him. The woman says that when Yuma wakes up, he will be happy to see his friends. She, holding the boy in her arms, adds that they still have a lot to overcome, because Kurokuze's fight is just beginning and they leave. The unknown person tells Richt, who is reading the book, that these are all the forbidden texts they have found so far. He adds that, however, even history needs breaks for rest. Fate is much more fickle than people think. Richt closes the book and says that they must then prepare for the story that has yet to be written.